Okay, it's on.
All right, so chapter 8. I'm skipping the section on the European Union. I discussed last time the euro itself as a currency and the European financial crisis. Now I got only 2 sections left, hopefully quickly. I don't have a section for me here is number 6 is Americas. So this is integration, economic integration in the Americas. And the big one is, the first big one is called NAFTA. Standing for North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. Is it, maybe you need to move the camera a little bit to point it a little bit closer. Okay, yeah, much better. So NAFTA is North America Free Trade Agreement, and it's very simple. You want to get, well, Americans want to get Canada and Mexico to open so that the Americans can get the Canadian markets for free, and they can get the Mexican market for free, so they can sell as much as they want to sell in Mexico. And originally the fears were that, as soon as you open Mexico, all major American corporations, Nora, come on, okay, enough. So all major American, especially multinational corporations, will move their manufacturing out of the U.S. and will relocate it in Mexico. They call this, and it's actually a special phrase, they have it on 304, known as a giant sucking sound. A giant sucking sound that it's going to suck a lot of jobs out of the U.S. and it's going to move the jobs into Mexico. Same were the fears of Canadians. Well, it turned out to be totally wrong. There were few jobs and few manufacturing that was actually relocated to Mexico. Again, the other fear on the opposite side was that American exports will flood the Mexican market, and that Mexico or many Mexican businesses will be bankrupted. Well, that didn't happen either, because American businesses were already heavily exporting to Mexico. They were exposed, they had the connections, they had the businesses, and Mexican businesses were eager to import from the U.S. and to sell to the Mexican market. So the Mexican market was already well developed and well saturated with American exports, and when the border opened, there wasn't a major competitive pressure in Mexico. So it turned out, while NAFTA was overall improvement, a small improvement for the U.S., the improvement was small. At the same time, while the fear was that it's going to be terrible for Mexico, it proved not to be terrible for Mexico. It was okay. It was a small improvement for Mexico too. So actually, here, the history of it shows that there was a small overall positive effect. Canadians benefited a little, Americans benefited a little, Mexicans benefited a little, and of course, you always have some loser groups, but these are narrowly concentrated. So, let's see what we have. They abolish tariffs. These are on page 302. Abolish, I'm writing small, abolish tariffs. The year is 2004. for almost everything, meaning like for 99% of goods, exports and imports. So,
Sorry. What?
Can you maybe write?
Sorry, I cannot read that.
right a little bigger?
Yes, please.
Okay, abolish tariffs in 2004. So, for the last 10 years, it has been mostly open for 99% of goods. There's been no tariffs at all. Okay, so that was a key one. Now here is the other one which Americans always insist on is protection of intellectual property rights. So I'm going to write it a little bit bigger now. Property rights. Americans always insist everywhere in the world, whether it's trade with China or with Taiwan or with any country, say, oh, we want to protect property rights. Of course, they claim property rights to themselves. They'll say property rights actually mean intellectual. As in movies, as in books, as in patents, as in copyrights, all of these intellectual property rights, so that American companies can continue to profit from them. Let's see also, oh yeah, another one which is big one is FDI. Removal of most restrictions on foreign direct investment. So, if Americans want, they can invest in Mexico. If Mexicans want, they can invest in the US. But Mexicans don't have the capital to do that. So, when you have removal of restrictions on FDI, it is usually the big, rich countries that can benefit more by investing in the poor countries. So this removal of FDI pretty much opens the doors of American businesses to invest in Mexico. And here is another one, environmental standards. With environmental standards, it's more tricky and it's more complicated because Americans, as well as the other developed countries, they kind of like want to have it both ways. They say, oh, the problem with China is that Chinese don't have environmental standards. And remember, environmental standards are very costly. And therefore, the Chinese are competing unfairly against Americans because there is no environmental standard, and this makes for their product to be relatively cheaper. But then again, if Americans want to move their production into China, they don't want to have high environmental standards. All right? So, if they want to be moving their production there, they say, oh, no, we want to have low environmental standards. But if foreigners are producing on their own and they say, oh, their environmental standards are too low, we have to raise the environmental standards so as to make their production less competitive on global markets. So somehow they want to have it both ways, depending on how it suits their own interest, okay? But in this particular case, they insisted on raising the environmental standards in Mexico, mostly, because oh, our environmental standards are high and they are low, and they want to push them to higher environmental standards so as to make their production and output relatively uncompetitive on the global markets. And let's see what else we got. And an overall body or commission similar to the European Commission to oversee businesses and all the other things. In other words, to oversee whether NAFTA is followed and all the other things, that others are playing fair. All right. So again, it makes a lot of sense. They are geographically nearby. The economies are relatively different. Mexican economy is very different from the US economy, and it makes a lot of sense to integrate them and merge them as long as it's based on fair terms and conditions. That's fairly clear. There was an observed benefit. That's also fairly clear. So overall, it is a good idea. Some people were very, very concerned that it's going to be terrible for Mexico because they can't compete against American companies. That turned out to be mostly false. Many people feared that a lot of American jobs will get lost and moved to Mexico. That also turned out to be false. Yes, jobs were moved from the US to Mexico, but not as many, because Mexico is relatively small and the US economy is relatively large. A small number of jobs in the US were moved to Mexico, and for the Americans, it did not affect terribly the American economy. The effect was minor. But these jobs moving to Mexico had a nice, good, positive effect, because let's say 50,000 jobs lost in America is like nothing for the American economy, okay? But 50,000 jobs created in Mexico is like a good positive effect. 50,000 jobs is a lot of jobs. In this case, we can say even 500,000 jobs is nothing for the US, but 500,000 jobs for Mexico will be a good benefit for the economy. So overall, the fears turned out and proved to be relatively unfounded. And most people who said that terrible things would happen, the terrible things actually didn't happen. I mean, we don't hear much about them, and we don't get many documentaries about them, which is a decent indicator that things didn't go horribly wrong with this type of a union. Same thing with, as I mentioned, with our home country, Bulgaria. There were a lot of fears that when Bulgaria, come on girls, all right, enough, okay? There were a lot of fears that when Bulgaria and Romania will join the European Union, terrible things will happen in the European Union, like Bulgarians will just flood Europe and steal a lot of jobs. Same thing with Romanians. And the opposite, that Europeans will come and whatever, destroy our own markets. But that didn't turn out to be that terrible, meaning the overall negative effects were minimal and the positive effects were fairly good. Yeah, a lot of European companies and businesses make big business in Bulgaria and Romania. They profit and benefit out of it. A lot of jobs got created in Bulgaria and Romania inside, so things worked fairly well. And there's something else that happened. A lot of Bulgarians after the union, and I lived there for 4 years before I moved to Asia, were saying, hey, we're in the European Union, we don't need anymore to go to work in Germany, we don't need anymore to go to work in Italy or Spain or some other country. Things are fine here. Yeah, salaries are a little lower, but we're a homeland, we're between our friends, and things are going to get a whole lot better. So many people, in anticipation of the rising standards, decided not to move and take a German's job or a Frenchman's job, okay? So usually these things are, in these particular cases of integration, not as bad as originally most people fear. Okay, that's a whole different story. This type of integration, like the European Union and NAFTA, is totally different from what you saw in Jamaica, where things are usually one-sided when the economy is fundamentally weak. And get this, Americans don't lower the agricultural tariffs. They don't lower the agricultural tariffs on Jamaica, but Jamaica's got to lower its tariff on America. In other words, when things are extremely unfair. Because in this case, it's both ways. We can export to Germany tariff-free, and Germans can export to Bulgaria tariff-free. So things are a lot fairer in this particular case. Same thing between Mexico. Nora, come on, girl. Move around, okay? I mean, just keep talking first to the one, first to the other, okay? Yeah. Well, I mean, just you guys, enough, all right? Or just move somewhere else, huh? Get out of them. No, we're gonna try. We're gonna keep moving a little bit, then we're gonna finish, maybe, probably, all right? Well, if you want to get the break, you can just get your break out, and I'll continue without you, no problem. All right, so there's a commission to oversee and whatnot. I was back to Mexico, but with Mexico benefiting to the open market in the U.S., and the U.S., the situation is more symmetric between Mexico and the U.S. as opposed to Jamaica and U.S., which we had as a case study. Let's see what else, okay? Enlargement, they talk about all the other things, but that's not really interesting. All right, number 2. So, this is the first big American. The second one is called the Andean. The Andean Community, not Indian. Andean as in the Andes. Andes is a mountain in South America, very tall, very narrow, kind of like runs across or runs along Chile, in the Chilean border. Andean Community, and it's got Bolivia. Let's write out the countries. Bolivia, Chile, let's make sure I got them right. Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru. At least these were the original ones. The Andean Community is old, very old, as old as me, 44 years old. 1969, at least that's when it began. It worked for a while, and then it stopped working. Turns out that you have a very, very good example for you as Europeans living in the European community to know and understand what history tells you. And history tells you something very interesting, which we all know it's common sense, but we've seen it over and over and over again. When things were good, the Union worked fairly well, and people in the different countries wanted to work together. They wanted to do trade, they wanted to do business, they wanted to be, growing and developing the overall integration in Union. And then, as soon as things got bad, the economic situation worsened. In other words, as they got into an economic crisis, suddenly every country wanted to be out of the Union. Suddenly they didn't want to work together anymore. So they got a number of problems like low growth. That should be familiar to all of Europeans. Political unrest. I don't know if you got a lot of this in Germany, but I'm sure, and I've seen it a lot in Greece, you got a lot of it in Italy, you got a lot of it in Spain, in Portugal. There is a growing unrest in Ireland. There is a big unrest political in France, okay, against the European Union. Let's see what they got. Yeah, crushing debt. Crushing debt. Yes, you got this even in France. You got it everywhere in Europe. I don't know if you guys realize that the two supposedly pillars of European financial stability, France and Germany, are in deep, deep, deep debt. They're in serious debt. France is technically and practically for all purposes bankrupt. And Germany is moving on the road to bankruptcy. Germany is going to go bankruptcy if they continue to support Greece and all the other European countries. Germany's got a huge debt, over 90%. That debt is unsustainable. The German economy can't support it. And the problem is that the debt is rising pretty fast. Rising debt means that, hey, Germans were fine 5 years ago, and 3 years ago they were okay. But the debt is rising so fast that now you look at them and say, these guys are going to go bankrupt. All right? And again, when you have crushing debt, suddenly everyone starts to pull away from this thing, say, no, 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 we don't want to have anything to do with this thing. And they also had, let's see what else, inflation, high inflation. They say that high inflation is not a problem yet in Europe and in the European Union, but unfortunately, inflation is steadily rising in Europe, and as fast as the ECB is printing, inflation will continue to rise. And as I was explaining last time, based on monetary policy with the banks, fiscal policy with the government, and the ECB in between, it appears that they will not let governments go bankrupt and they won't let banks go bankrupt, which means that they'll continue to devalue the euro, and you continue to get a huge and accelerating inflation in Europe. So inflation in Europe is going to be a bigger and bigger and bigger problem, and coupled with low growth. Actually, Europe has been for 5 years in depression and will be for another 5 or more years in depression, with more political unrest and all of these problems. You can be sure that most European countries will start to pull away to want to separate from the European Union. The first one eager to separate is the UK. Now the Greeks are saying, well, we don't want the currency anymore. Okay, so you're going to see these are called separatist movement, a movement where people inside the country want to separate themselves from the Union. All right, so things went bad for many years, let's say for a decade, and later on these guys said again, they adopted the free market ideology. They said, yeah, we need the Union. Yes, there will be a benefit to Union. And again, they start moving closer and start to reintegrate again. And they're doing things, but it's not very significant. First, the countries aren't big. They aren't very powerful. They're fairly small. They're fairly weak. This is R here, sorry guys, Peru. They're small. They're relatively weak. They're relatively undeveloped, or they're just poor developing countries that are trying to stand up to US and other developing countries. So overall, relatively insignificant. Today, it operates mostly as a customs union with low or no tariffs between themselves. And they're trying to shield themselves with relatively high tariffs up against the rest of the world. Another one, number 3 here, is called Mercosur, or Mercosur. It's between Brazil, right there, Brazil, and Argentina. It's a free trade pact, okay? Some other countries wanted to join in. Paraguay, Venezuela joined in, Uruguay joined in. Again, some were for, some were against. Not very significant. It's just a free trade area. They don't have any currency ideas or all the other things. Not very, very significant economically and globally. But you should be aware that it exists. So countries are trying to do these little things, but they're small countries, they're inefficient countries. You got to understand that the problems here are very easy to understand. All of these countries are poor. All of these countries have bad governments, especially Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia. They got fairly bad governments. When the government is fairly bad and their governance is fairly bad, most politicians don't care about the country. They don't want to improve about the country. Most of their governments are totally corrupt. Corruption is pretty much a problem everywhere in Latin America, in all of these countries. So these corrupt politicians want to get rich quickly, and they don't care about their own countries. So when they do these deals, they do these deals not to profit their own people or their own economies, but mostly to profiteer from these deals themselves. So if you got two bad governments, and when two bad governments get together, you don't expect the result to be a whole lot better, right? I have a lot of this experience in universities when I'm teaching, and I got a lot of F students. And when you put two F students to work together, the result is an F grade again, okay? And it's, you don't expect two F students to get a D or A, right? It just doesn't work like that. So when you get two really bad and corrupt governments, all right, and each trying to, to screw their own people for their own benefit, when they make the merger between them, the result is just as bad or pretty much no improvement for the people, no overall improvement for the economy, but there is a definite improvement for the overall benefit of these politicians. Think in terms of the case study of Indonesia. When Indonesia opened up to the rest of the world, this was a huge benefit for a small percentage of rich Indonesian people, where the rich were getting a whole lot richer. Okay, you saw some of these rich weddings, how rich people get married over there in extraordinary luxury, and little or no improvement for the poor people. So this is usually a merger where the elite, the top elite, the top 1% will skim and suck all the benefits for themselves, and the 99% will see nothing out of it, okay? And that's how these are usually designed, okay? Just as was the case with Indonesia. Yes, the rich there got a whole lot richer, and local businessmen got a whole lot better off, but 99% of the people saw nothing, or things got worse for them. And these are pretty much the same cases. You just got two bad governments joining together, and don't expect anything good to happen. And good things don't happen much anyway. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have some benefits, but they're gonna be small and minor. And let's see what else we got. CAFTA, CARICOM. Yeah, the Caribbeans want to do a little something. They see that North America's doing their thing. They see that Latin America's doing their thing. So the Caribbean countries want to do their thing. But again, you saw Jamaica, you already know what is happening. If they go with another Caribbean country and they make the trade union, you don't expect much to happen, okay? Because the whole economy is busted, they don't have the capital, nothing's going to happen. And trading one banana country or republic trading with another banana republic, you don't expect much else to happen. You know, then we're going to be trading bananas with bananas, and then we're going to be trading potatoes with potatoes, right? Or onions with onions. So you don't expect much benefit out of that thing to happen anyway. So, Nora, you want to get a break? 5-10 minutes? Or no break?
Depends on the time.
Huh?
When we're finished.
Yeah, okay, well, I don't know. Well, we got just regional integration in Asia. I can continue and finish a little early. All right, let's just do, you guys want a break or no break? I mean, I don't have a much for no break, right?
We should be at the Asia Exchange meeting at 12.
Maybe. All right, okay.
We are invited to come.
All right, let's try quickly. Asia. Asia's got, again, a few of them. They're not very interesting. There is one, the big one, the most important one, the one that is making steadily a difference, and it's called, and they like to pronounce it as ASEAN. ASEAN. It's getting big and bigger. It started out early on, historically known as the Bangkok Declaration. Bangkok Declaration, I don't know if we got an year, yeah, 67, yeah, long time ago. And it started out as 5 countries originally. The first 5 original members were Indonesia, Malaysia, let me see, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. I'm just going to shorten the Philippines, shorten Singapore, and Thailand. Again, it's mostly business, it's mostly trade. To foster, the whole idea is about, focuses on free trade between them, between commerce. Later on, they're going to focus on more tourism and other things. And now, so you got 5 original members, and you got later on 5 more members joined. Let's try and get those 5 too. Cambodia, a neighbor of Thailand, Vietnam, sometimes pronounced as, 2 pronunciations could be Lao or Laos. Both pronunciations are okay, Lao and Laos. And let's make sure we got Brunei. So, now ASEAN's got a total of 10 countries.
There's one.
Is there one? Okay, let me see which one. Brunei, Cambodia, Laos. Oh, Myanmar. Yeah. Thank you. Myanmar. So, these 10 countries are trying to do what the European Union is doing. No more tariffs, free movement of labor. So they are trying to create now, and they are supposedly next year opening up borders for labor too, to create now an economic union, but without the currency. So ASEAN is doing big. They see the Americans on the one side with NAFTA growing. They see the European Union. So far, they've observed the good, the boom side of the European Union. They perceive the European Union as a model that they want to follow. They are building their ASEAN Union similar to the European Union. They think that the European Union, or they were thinking a while ago, is working well. Of course, the European Union is mostly positive. the euro was implemented poorly because, as I was explaining last time, lenders in Germany and France believed that there would be guarantees if Greece would go bankrupt, okay? And these guarantees distorted financial markets and the currency market and all the other problems. But overall, there are nice, good, solid, positive benefits in the European Union. And now these guys are doing similar things. Now they're opening travel between themselves. They travel pretty much visa-free in between their own countries. So tourism is doing okay. Next year, they will be removing a lot of restrictions on foreign labor. So now people from Malaysia would be able to work here, and people here would be working in Malaysia. As an example, businesses will be opening more investments. So they are going the European way. They want to go the European way. They are a lot slower in going there, but you know, speed is not as important as the overall understanding and benefit of it. And let's see what else I got here important. Free trade, okay, growth, yeah, prosperity, all the stuff, standard stuff, a little bit of growth, and that's pretty much it. You got two more, which are not very important. One of them is called the Asia Pacific. The Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. And I was reading the book, said, how come I'm following all global developments and what's going on around the world? I don't know anything about Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation. It includes like a bunch of Asia. It includes a bunch of America, and I haven't heard about it. And how come? And then, as I've been reading more and more and more, I found the key words and the answer. The first one is, it's all big, giant talk, and it is voluntary. Which basically means we're all going to talk, we're all going to do agreements, but then you're going to do whichever you want to do, and I'm going to do whatever I like to do. In other words, it means nothing. And the other one, which is again part of the voluntary part, is non-binding agreement. Now, you're laughing. In English, this is the word is called oxymoron. It's like, it's an agreement, but it's not binding. And it's like, it's like a conflict, like the impossible combination. Okay, I'll agree to do this, and you agree to do that. We both agree. But at the same time, we agree that, yeah, I don't have to stick to our agreement, and you don't have to stick to your agreement. So, not much of an agreement. So, we agree, but it's not really a real agreement because, you know, I can still do whatever I want to do. You can still do whatever you want to do. I don't have to stick to my word. You know, it's non-binding. I'm not bound by the agreement, okay? So I can make you a promise, but I don't have to hold my promise. Well, it's not really a promise. And this one is not really agreement. So, hey, you want to participate? Fine. You don't want to participate? Okay. Okay, no problem. Let's agree. We agree, but then don't hold me on to it. It's non-binding anyway. So, it has no weight whatsoever. It's all talk, and let's put it differently. It's a good way for politicians to get together, have party in an exotic place, okay? Paid by the taxpayers, okay? And you get to meet a lot of other nice politicians, You get to socialize, you get to get good contacts, okay? You can get business contacts, you can get your own, especially for those smaller countries, you can get your business contacts, and you can develop your own private businesses while you're going there and meeting with other politicians. So, no big deal, no economic significance, no political significance, it's just another name. And the last one is South Asian Association. Next one, South Asian Association. Which pretty much pulls together all the losers of Asia. These are countries that nobody wants to work with. They're totally poor, they're corrupt, they're totally messed up. No one would ever want to do any kind of business, so they decide, hey guys, no one wants to do business with us, let's get together and do our own business. Let's throw some names. Well, I don't want to start with Nepal, but things are pretty bad over there. I got a lot of Nepali friends. I worked in Bahrain. I got a lot of Nepali friends. I had, for a short while, a Nepali girlfriend. Nice, very good people, but the government is terrible. And the country is poor. Very, very, very poor. Another country like that will be Bhutan. B-U-H-T-A-N. Bhutan. Another very poor country. Of course, you take country, let me see, Pakistan, just want to make sure. Yes, Pakistan. Pakistan, very poor country. Again, all of these countries are in brutal competition for #1 spot on corruption. I mean, Nepali government is very corrupt, Pakistani government is very corrupt, Indonesian government is very corrupt, okay? So all of these governments are viciously corrupt and they compete. Who's the worst of them? Let's see a few more if we got, yeah, Sri Lanka or Sri Lanka. Another very, very poor country, which is poorly run country. The Maldives, oh yeah, Afghanistan. Afghanistan, another extraordinarily poor country with poor natural resources, pretty bad government. Culturally, they stick to their own history. They don't want to be developed. They don't care about being developed. They don't care about education that much. You've seen pretty much a lot on TV about Afghanistan, and it's just a hopeless country. Let's see what else we got. Bangladesh? Oh yeah, Bangladesh, yeah. Again, terrible education, terrible economy, average monthly wages of $50, $60 a month, extraordinarily poor, and again, fighting viciously for #1 on corruption with Nepal, with Pakistan, with other countries. And you might as well, if you got these, you might as well throw in India.
What's actually Burma?
Burma, okay, let's write it out. Myanmar is the new name of Burma. Yes, Burma is also very poor. Burma is also very or relatively corrupt. They are changing fast. They're eager to make the changes. Yeah, they still got like a military dictatorship. Okay, so Burma is the old name. People understand that Burma doesn't sound good, so they changed the name to Myanmar. Again, politics, ethics. I mean, I'm not quite familiar, but now a lot of international companies and international investors, I follow some of them, believe that Myanmar is very poor. But starting from a low base, growing fast, has an extraordinary economic potential. What, let's say, Vietnam was 20 or 30 years ago, what Thailand was 20 or 30 years ago. And they believe that Myanmar is one of the better places to invest today in Asia, being costs still relatively cheap and government improving fast and still very uncompetitive. In other words, the economy is wide open. You want to open a hotel? Sure, there aren't any hotels. You're going to be getting customers. You want to open a restaurant? Sure. You want to open any kind of business? The market is uncompetitive. Similar is the situation, a little better, is in Cambodia. Cambodia has improved very well. Cambodia is a great country to invest in. They are, again, where Thailand was 20 years ago. Outstanding prospect. Culture is very conducive to business. Government is making big changes. Again, infrastructure is very undeveloped with roads and internet and other little problems over there, but they are improving tremendously. Some people think, oh, it's way too late already to invest in Cambodia. The place to invest is now Myanmar, okay? Well, when I was teaching in Taiwan, I was asking my students, because many of them would be wealthy, well, where are your parents now moving money and investing? Which is the hot country to invest in? And they all said, Vietnam. Vietnam was really good. That was 2 years ago. I said, Vietnam was really good. Because Vietnam was like in the middle. It already had a decent infrastructure. It was still relatively low in cheap labor, but it was overall fairly well. So they said, Vietnam would provide the optimal middle ground because it's going to be still ahead of Cambodia, still going to be ahead of Myanmar, but it's still going to be relatively cheap. And let's see, I think I'm pretty much done. What is it, Leonora said you had now, 12 o'clock?
The Asia exchange.
Okay, Asia exchange. Thank you.